In this episode, we're going to talk about the benefits of talking about your plot before you actually write something. So, welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Authors, where we talk about the craft and business of writing. There are people who say that if you actually talk about your plot before you write it, that's a bad idea because it'll kind of eliminate your desire to actually go through and write it. But in our experience, exactly the opposite is true. Assuming you can find the right, what we call beta listener to be your plot talk partner.
So what is a plot talk partner or a beta listener? It's someone that you're not asking them to critique your writing. You're asking them to listen to your story and your plot. And it's kind of like you're telling a story of what's going to happen. And this is where you're thinking about it's going to go. And you kind of need some help figuring out maybe where to go next or what's the best path for your main character to take. A beta listener is someone who is a good listener. And someone also, I think they need to be an avid reader, someone who really likes to read, likes books, understands book structure, someone who can generate ideas and is willing to kind of get into the mindset of your story and talk it out with you and try on different avenues.
So the first benefit of talking plot has nothing to do with the actual kind of backing and forthing of ideas. That can happen via email or text or however you want to do it. It has to do with kind of the method of transmission. In other words, talking out loud somehow seems to engage a different part of your brain than just thinking about it. And it helps you get different ideas about your story, maybe think about your story in a different way than just silently thinking about it.
It's kind of like looking at it from a different angle. Engages your brain so it looks at it from a different angle. It also has a potentially big payoff because it gets it out of your head and kind of into the world. When you talk plot with someone, I talk plot with Mark. And when I talk plot with Mark, it can be really fun, but it can also be an exercise in patience. And I think that when you're talking plot with someone, you need to just appreciate that they're willing to talk plot with you. And all their stupid ideas, you just be appreciative of them. Because after 99 stupid ideas, there's going to be that one. And it's like panning for gold. It's like you're sifting through all that sand. You're just sifting and sifting through all that sand. And then there's this gold nugget that has come from it. So it has potentially big payoffs. And I've got a really good story for this, actually. When I was starting the SAMMY KEYES series, so Sammy's a girl who lives illegally with her grandmother in a seniors-only apartment complex where she's not supposed to live. And I had this whole picture of her environment, where she lived and what her home situation and all that kind of stuff was. She sees a burglar in a hotel across the road, and she sees him with her binoculars. Her grandmother has forbidden her to look in the hotel with binoculars because obviously. So she's looking in, and it's a burglary in progress. Instead of calling 911, she winds up like focusing in on this guy. So I had this whole scene, and it was very exciting because then he looks up and sees her looking at him. And so now that chase is on, he knows that she's seen him and she knows what he looks like. So I was very excited, can you tell? And when I let Mark read it and we talked about the plot, he said, "Oh, I love this, I love this, I love this," as a good critique person will do. And then he hesitated and I said, "What?" And this is where we started talking about the plot. He said, "I thought she was going to wave at the guy." And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just so crazy that she would wave at the guy. But it was crazy perfect. I realized that it's very valuable to talk to my plot listener. So like a plot whisperer. There's so much benefit to it because getting it out there and talking about it allows you to see things in a way that maybe you hadn't before.
The third benefit is you can come up with bonus ideas, bouncing these ideas around. And what's really important is kind of the way you do it. She and I took a road trip one time. We spent 16 weeks on the road on a giant book tour, and we covered over 15,000 miles, and we didn't turn the radio on once.
Because I have him.
And I have
and
her.
He's very verbal.
She said, she said. The whole idea was we just bounced ideas along the whole way for projects that both of us were working. And I think a real important thing is it is not an exercise in, well, how would I have written that scene?
Yeah.
And writers tend to do that. That's why your plot talking partner can be a reader who's not a writer. That's fine, because writers, their natural inclination is to say, well, I would have done this. And that's
even if they don't say that, they're
Right.
thinking that, and
Right.
they're applying their own style of writing to your work.
And we're going to talk in detail in another video about being a critique partner and just being part of a critique group. But of course, the number one rule is find out what the other person wants to do. That's the first thing I do when someone asks me for some ideas. I say, what are you trying to do here? Because the last thing I want to do is to tell them how I would write it. And the last thing I want to hear from somebody else is how they would have written my scene. Because I don't want to be them. They don't want to be me. I want to write my scene the best I can with some assistance from them. So think of it this way. It's like a gentle game of ping pong. And a low gravity game of ping pong on the moon, very slowly back, just a real gentle back and forth. Sometimes it'll be like, how about this? And then she'll say, yes, because if that happened, then this could happen. I'll say, oh yeah, and that would lead to this. And so you're adding on to each other's ideas, not saying, no, I don't like that. I want to do this. That's absolutely the wrong way. You want to be yes and rather than no but.
That's a skill that you need to cultivate, because especially when it's your baby, you know, there's something that you've written. You may be stuck, but you may be like resistant to bouncing the idea around. So it's something you have to cultivate. It's just like be open to the ideas that someone who is gracing you with their time and thoughts, you know, their creative input is willing to give you.
And the final benefit?
The bonus benefit is that having a beta listener can help your plot get unstuck. Think of it as being like your mental Metamucil, where, you know, a little dose, pretty soon you're flowing. So we'll be talking more about plot and ways to avoid the sagging middle in a coming episode. But for now, we hope you've gotten something out of spending some time with us and having a cup of coffee. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, dream big, work hard, don't give up.
Keep writing. Keep your ideas flowing free. I'm flowing free, Mama.
I got my mental Metamucil.